Anytime you're ready, John.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts from the John DeVito Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, August the 17th, the year 2016. And now here they are, Jim and Rich.
We're not sitting up. We're not breathing on our own. We're not taking nourishment. Is that what it is?
Did you notice lately? Did the powers that be come down on John?
I think so. I noticed something's missing.
Something's missing in the intro there.
I know.
So is it one of the atheists at the school complained that he said the year of our Lord?
I think.
Was that was too much for somebody's little psyche there? You don't know. John, we can't hear you.
I can't hear you, John.
You got to step up to the mic there.
Okay, I have to be careful what I say because I'm not sure if that's allowed.
Oh, jeez! I thought this was the United States of America.
You know, with Garrison Keillor giving up, retiring from a Prairie Home Companion recently, I've been going back and finding some clips on YouTube and some things from some of his shows, and one of his monologues referred to the fact that he grew up in a Lutheran household and in a very Lutheran town. He said even the atheists were Lutheran.
Yes.
They didn't believe in a Lutheran God. So
yeah, Jim, the one thing we haven't said in a long time, as I'm sitting here and I hear John talk about the John DeVito Broadcast Center, I just have to say how much I appreciate this place.
Oh yeah,
because this is just a fantastic setup that John has, and we really appreciate it, John.
We do. We appreciate you.
Well, you know, when you love doing something, you put your heart and soul into it.
You really did.
Yeah.
And this is the love of my life.
No smoking, no drinking, no eating, no farting.
That's right.
That's right. There's the motto of the whole operation.
That's right.
That sounds like a good one, though. Although we are drinking, but not the type of drinking.
But it's coffee. But it's coffee.
It's caffeine.
Yeah, it's caffeine.
But no, I enjoy radio broadcasting very much. When I was just a little boy, I used to have an interest in it.
And I've said before, you've given me an opportunity to do something I wanted to do about 47 years ago.
Yep.
So, yeah, John. Thanks. Jim thanks you.
Yeah, so we appreciate that.
And I appreciate the great friendship I have with you two gentlemen.
Oh my God!
Thanks, buddy.
Here we are, the Mutual Admiration Society.
As I told you before, you are the family that I enjoy being with.
Do you remember that song, John? We belong to a mutual admiration society.
My baby and
well,
me.
we just lost our listener.
Yeah, Laura LaBarbera has just turned the radio.
Yeah, really. What the heck?
Hi, Laura. How you doing?
Hey, you turned me on to the Tim Kirkjian book. What was the name of it again?
I am fascinated by sacrifice flies. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I look at.
I read about half of it, sitting in a bookstore in Bolingbrook, having coffee, waiting for Dana.
Oh, it's an easy read and very interesting book. So, what fascinates me is that somebody could put that much time into. Here's a guy. What did he say? He cut out every box score and put them in I don't know, notebooks or whatever.
Notebooks
for
like
over 20 years, I think.
Yeah. And there's guys. I know there's broadcasters who will do that. That guys who will do a game, were very meticulous about their scorecard, and the next day they may take the box score and just tape it in there so they have a record of it in case they go back. I think surprisingly, I think they said Harry Carey was like that.
I think in that business it's probably beneficial.
Yeah, and I expect somebody. I'd love to see. Since he's going to be retiring shortly, I'd love to see what Vin Scully has saved over the years.
Oh my gosh!
For 67 years doing this.
Yeah. It was just I appreciate you recommending the book, Jim, and it was just
it's a good read. Actually, I want to get it from my library in Woodridge and read the second half of it that I didn't.
Oh, you didn't read the
I didn't read
half?
the whole. I haven't read the whole book.
Oh my gosh, it's a excellent book, and you know what? It's amazing. This guy, going over all of the box scores and all the great combinations he came up with Black and Decker, and these batteries that were formed and coincided with company names or different things.
The thing I got a kick out of was his stories about Mike Flanagan.
Those were good. I didn't get as big a yuck out of them as he did. I'll tell you what really I found interesting was his little bio on Don Zimmer, and just what a courageous guy Don Zimmer was. Man, a couple of really bad beatings, one that he didn't think he was even going to come back from, and he said, "Yeah, the pitchers greeted me the next year by throwing inside."
That's right.
Throwing at my head.
That's right.
That was the way it was back in those days.
And I remember in his later years when he was coaching. I think when he was coaching for Fry here, and they were in spring training, and he was sitting on top of some, construction supplies or something in the locker room, what they were doing, and he fell off. He fell off, and I think he knocked himself out. Mm-hmm. And everybody's gathered around him, and they're all in a panic, and the trainer brings him to, and, he said, "Who's the President of the United States? Who's the President of the United States?" Zimmer looked up at him and said, "Hell, I didn't even know who it was before I fell." So
it was a good book. You know what? It was interesting, and it's an argument that people are too thick-headed to realize is a good one. But his whole argument about baseball obviously being the greatest game, and that baseball players being the greatest athletes. Now, people would have a tendency to say NBA players or football players, but I think his point is well taken. Not too many NBA players or football players are going to be able to sit up there and hit major league pitching.
No.
And it's a
when you've got a 105 mile an hour fastball.
Well, he also makes a good point and says there are more three-sport Major League Baseball players, three-sport in terms of their high school careers, than there are three-sport football or basketball players. Way more.
Oh, it wouldn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me.
But
it's so funny when he talks about athletes, when you've seen guys on the field who just look out of shape.
Mm-hmm.
John Kruk, woman came out of the dugout for batting practice with his shirt open and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and some woman behind the dugout looked at him and said, "And you call yourself an athlete?" He turned around, looked at her, and says, "I'm no athlete, lady. I'm a baseball player." And think, would Mark Grace have had a better career if he would have taken better care of himself? He had a great career as it is.
Depends on.
I think Mark Grace is certainly a candidate for the Hall of the Very Good.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
But much too many nights in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I heard the stories. I heard some stories a number of years ago when I was out in Mesa, and I was in Harry and Steve Chicago Grill with a friend of mine right after spring training ended. There were some stories I had heard during spring training that were all confirmed to me by multiple people.
What's interesting, Jim, before I forget this, because I've already forgot it twice while we're sitting here talking, in the book it talks about one of my favorite subjects. I remember years ago Mike North, and we've talked about this on the show, or you and I have talked about this privately, said, "Hey, I think I could get up there and hit Jamie Moyer's fastball, 85, right?" And Kirkjian talks about, guys who are, 50-something and, maybe played a little high school ball, or maybe they didn't play any more than church league softball or something. And everybody thinks that they can do this. And he ran this question by some of the major league pitchers and came up with well, I don't know if you would call it a stat, but he said, you talk to these guys and they'll say, there is 0% chance that if I throw the ball 100 times that they're even going to hit it once. 0% chance. In other words, you know what? You just riled me. People are not going to be able to do this. They think that, they may be able to put a bat on the ball. Ain't going to happen. And does a nice little number about just how difficult it is to hit a major league pitch. And I find that to be true. I put myself in that position. Even if you knock 10 years off my age, you're not going to hit a major league pitcher.
Hit it. I always, you brought that up, and it made me think of the story that was in Bill Veeck's book when he brought Satchel Paige to Cleveland, and Lou Boudreau, who was having an incredible year in 1948. In fact, I think won the batting title, and was, I think, the MVP too.
Yeah, he was MVP
and won the batting title. Managed the team to a World Series championship too. Veeck told him, "I got a pitcher I want you bringing in to take a look at. Why don't you come out?" And he came out and he saw it was Satchel Paige, who was maybe in his mid-40s,
right,
by then. And Boudreau was very upset, but Boudreau got in there. Paige threw him 20 pitches, and he missed 19 of them. Boudreau missed 19 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find interesting there, Jim.
And then the only hit he got was a little ground ball.
What I'm thinking about as you're saying that is I'm glad that you clarified the fact that Lou Boudreau knew who Satchel Paige was, obviously.
Right, he did. Right.
And, interesting thing is,
people don't know history now.
Even though, there were probably, I would just say maybe the major league executives or some ball players would wish that the Negro League players were not as good as the major league players. Those who really maybe barnstormed with those guys who were, the Negro League players and knew their abilities, knew all about guys like Satchel Paige or Josh Gibson, and knew what they could do. It was a well-kept secret, but they all knew these guys were up to snuff.
Had great talent. I tipped you off, and I guess you didn't, and I was trying to send you the link to the article. Somebody blogged yesterday on CBS Chicago, Chris Emma, talking about Mark Prior and his life now. And it was a really, really good article on, Prior lays no blame, really no blame.
Yeah.
Really, the thing that probably did him, well, the thing that really did him in and ended his career was when he took that line drive into the elbow.
Yeah,
he never really came back from. Yeah. He never came back from that. Although he tried, he had a number of opportunities. I think he pitched for 4 different clubs in the minors, in their systems, and he was a relief pitcher, and he knew if he'd ever make it back into the majors, well, he was not going to be a top of the line relief pitcher. Mm-hmm. He was going to be somewhere down, the mop-up guy, or, somebody can't get past the 5th inning, he goes in.
Yeah.
And he said it really wasn't going to be for him. And he said he was pitching, I can't remember, I almost want to say he was pitching for the Reds, I think then, in the Reds system, when he realized it was over. He was pitching in a game, and he knew at the end of the prior inning his velocity was gone. Something happened to his arm then, and his velocity was gone, and he went out to the next inning and just, got through with whatever he could throw up there. Mm-hmm. They took him out of the game. He walked into the dugout, walked into the locker room, took his uniform off, called his wife up and said, "I'm done." And he recognized it. But he said he really kind of talked during that period of time when he was coming back, he was still playing for the love of the game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
He played for the love of the game. And, this is a smart guy, degree in business from, I think, USC. At this point in time, he was probably, 31 years old. He he had kids. And I almost want to say, might have been, was Hoyer out in San Diego at one point in time?
Who?
Jed Hoyer?
Yeah, he was.
But somebody contacted, and I'd have to go back and find the article now, but somebody contacted him and asked him, are you interested in doing some other things?
Mm-hmm.
So that's how he got started. He's now like the minor league pitching coordinator in the Padres organization. Everybody says that with his talent, with his abilities, with his intelligence, he could be a major league manager. He could be he could be a general manager. But right now he's making the circuit. He's looking at all their prospects, and they talked about one team when he came into town. For some reason, the pitching coach couldn't be there that night, so Pryor took over to be the pitching coach. He went over the scouting report with the kid who was pitching that night. Spent the time in the dugout. Busted his stones when he didn't do what he told him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the kid who was pitching said, I appreciated what he said to me. So, it's interesting to see that a guy who had a tremendous amount of potential knows there's life after the game, accepts what it is, and is looking forward to a new role.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. And I'd love to see him somewhere down the road be a manager, be a general manager, be a club official somewhere along the way. I think that's great.
He did the short time that he was effective for the Cubs. He was
One season.
He was a hero here.
One season.
Yeah.
And, let's not blame Bartman. Let's blame Alex Gonzalez for not being able to turn a double play.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, the other thing is there's 27 opportunities to make plays, and there's 27 opportunities for guys, or more than that,
more than that,
hits.
Yeah,
and have key contributions. So, as you say, Bartman gets a bad rap. Alex Gonzalez goes second, and Pryor probably goes third in the bad rap on that game. But it's a team. It always comes down to it's a team thing. Bartman didn't lose it for him. Gonzalez didn't lose it for him. Pryor didn't lose it for him. You know what? It's a team effort, win or lose. No question.
Yeah. I noticed an interesting thing today. The Cubs have the same record on this date that they did in 1969.
Oh boy! I'll tell you,
I'm a little worried.
You know what? Between my brother and his buddy Joe DiGiovanni, they're all worried. Oh yeah, well, we had a same lead in '69. This is not '69.
No.
Believe me, we're going to be
in
the playoffs. And the only worry I have, I would say, a lot of people are worried about the relief pitching. I'm not really that worried about it. I would say where the Cubs fall down is in being able to manufacture runs, getting a runner home from third. When they're hot and they're swinging the bats and the long ball is flying, which is their game, the hits are flying, they're good.
Yeah.
But postseason games are usually not that way.
Talk about Papelbon being available. Think he would be a good September pickup? If you can
be decent, you got to get him before September.
If you overlook the fact that most of the time Jonathan Papelbon is really a raging rectum.
Why? Because he tweaked Brian Harper a little bit.
Bryce Harper.
Or Bryce Harper.
Well, he's had that reputation prior to that.
Yeah, well, some guys are like that.
Yeah.
You get what you get.
Yeah.
I mean, there are guys who are edgy guys.
Like us. We're edgy.
Yeah.
So what else? Edgy. Anything on your mind today? Before we
You're talking to John or me?
You, John turned his back. John turned his back on us already. He's had enough.
I was just wondering if Kopech could come out with any more wrestling cards from 1966 or something.
No, that was cool, though.
That was real cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw a good article.
How about the Bears? Oh, go ahead.
I saw a really great article talking about sports and what our world would be like without sports.
Yeah, what would it be like?
Think about this. Steve Rushin wrote this article in the
Steve Rushin.
in the August 8th issue of Sports Illustrated. Steve Rushin is a local guy, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, he's a local guy.
He's a genius.
He had an article around Mother's Day talking about his mother chasing him and his brother around the kitchen when they were kids, swinging a yardstick that they got from a Chevrolet dealer out in Arlington Heights. And he talked about he talked about the fact that he was a White Sox fan, and his mother was proud of what he read, what he would write, and other things along the way here, and the fact that the stopping of the way the chasing around of him and his brother with the yardstick ended is when his brother got big enough, reached over, grabbed the yardstick from Mom, and snapped it in two.
I like that.
Then
I like that ending.
Then she chased him around with a wooden mixing spoon instead. So he said, really, and he said it gave him an opportunity. He said it must have helped because his brother got a scholarship to play hockey at Notre Dame and had a little cup of coffee, I guess, with the New York Rangers in their system. So, but he had an article here talking about sports. Sports aren't perfect, but they're the best thing man has yet devised to make marching band music palatable. Without sports, your local news and weather at 11 would be followed by nothing, and given how terrifying the news and weather are in 2016, a world without sports hardly bears imagining, but let's imagine it anyway. Because sports never existed, you seldom hear the national anthem. The plural of maple leaf is maple leaves, and hail is only compared to citrus fruits. Without sports, Wrigley is just a gum, Wimbledon is just a neighborhood, and NFL only resonates as the Amtrak station code for Niagara Falls. Without sports, you know far fewer Mickeys and not a single Mookie. Without sports, you have to drink this one I like. Without sports, you have to drink 16 Bud Lights to drink $9 worth of Bud Light. Sudden death is something dreaded rather than looked forward to. In this benighted world without sports, an anonymous senior citizen named Arnold Palmer always orders a half iced tea and half lemonade instead of ordering a me. Without sports, you don't know Dick, because Dick has no sporting goods to sell. Without sports, you haven't a clue on how to pronounce Krzyzewski, Tuiasosopo, or Mönchengladbach. 60 Minutes always airs on time. The T-shirt cannon has never been conceived, and much less joyously discharged, and Drake has nowhere to go tonight. Without sports, 406 means nothing, belly itcher isn't even a word, and that one Spice Girl is known as physically fit Spice. Without sports, Wheaties is the breakfast of actuaries, and Formula One is the first of many failed predecessors to Formula 409. Without sports, there are no baseball caps, no drawstring sweatpants, no striped tube socks, no high-top Chuck Taylors, no threadbare T-shirts that say "Tommy is my homie," which is another way of saying that without sports, I'm naked right now. Without sports, at least some people who say I would be dead or in prison without sports are dead or in prison. Without sports, a pair of orderlies speaking in soothing tones gently lead Skip Bayless away when they find him arguing with a lamppost. Without sports, there's nothing special about the first Saturday in May, the first Sunday in February, or the entire month of March. Friday night is not lit. Separation Saturday and Separation Sunday are Saturday and Sunday, respectively. Mr. October is the exclusive preserve of Playgirl. Without sports, you wear a regular bra and drive a regular utility vehicle to go get a regular haircut at whatever they decided to call Sport Clips instead. All your heroic maladies, your athlete's foot, your jock itch, your sports hernia, are now just embarrassing afflictions stripped of their gladiatorial implications. Without sports, man's crowning achievements, slow-motion replay, sausage races, and the Zamboni were never crowned. Our great philosophers, Satchel Paige, Casey Stengel, and Lawrence Barrow, were never heard. Huey Lewis and the News had nothing to call their third album. True, a world without sports is not all bad. Tax money goes to education instead of billionaires. PED scandals aren't a thing, and you haven't had to hear Rock and Roll Part 2 in 44 years. Meanwhile, mercifully, the golf joke does not exist, and yet, without sports, you've never eaten anything out of a plastic batting helmet. The actor Michael B. Jordan goes by Michael Jordan because he's the only Michael Jordan anyone's ever heard of. No one ever sings "Where Have You Gone, Joe DiMaggio," because Joe DiMaggio never arrived in the first place. There's no there's no Coliseum. There's no Cooperstown. There's no Caddyshack. Without sports, Jackie Robinson, Babe Ruth, Sandy Koufax, Gale Sayers, Terry Bradshaw, Lynn Swann, Fran Tarkenton, and Steph Curry all elicit the same response: never heard of her. Without sports, you never played catch with your dad or horse with your daughter. You never played ping pong, beer pong, or just pong with your buddies. Your life has 90% less confetti and not a single champagne shower. Without sports, we live in a joyless, gronkless, Fosbury flop-free world. It's Indianapolis without the 500, Manchester without the United. Life is a lot drearier, and do you believe in miracles is no longer a rhetorical question.
Yeah, that is a really good article. I tell you what, that you could talk about every other thing under the sun and try to downplay sports, but sports, I would say, is the one. I mean, the game itself. I'm not talking about everything else, the drama around the games. The participants. It's the one pure thing that I could think of, and I think that's why a lot of us are still, as we get older, in love with sports.
That's right. That's right.
So I there's no question about it.
Yeah.
It's a very pure thing.
Yeah. Should we talk football?
I was going to say, did you see Laurie Hernandez on the balance beam last night?
No, I did not.
I'll tell you. You know, I didn't see the other participants.
I didn't
but,
watch it last night.
You know, I read an article during the week that said I think it was Laurie Hernandez, or could have been one of the other girls on the U.S. team, and the writer said something to the effect, when this girl is on the balance beam, it looks like she's on the dance floor. I mean, that's how sure she is at it. And I just happened to have the TV tuned in when she was up on the balance beam yesterday, and I'll tell you, that writer, I could see what that writer was talking about, because the things they're doing are unbelievable. I mean, she'd do like 2 backflips in a row, and still she's on the beam. I'd be in the hospital, for God's sakes.
We'd have fallen off.
Yeah.
We'd have fallen off trying to get up.
We would have gone up one side and back off the other.
Yeah. We wouldn't have had a chance.
But you know what? I've watched more. I'd never watched very much of the Olympics, but I got this chance to see Katie Ledecky set the world record in which was the race they ran Friday. Was that 1,500 meters or 800 meters?
I can't remember which one.
It's been pretty exciting. I watched some of the beach volleyball, our ladies team.
I thought it was really kind of cool when I saw an article with regarding Michael Phelps and the young fellow from, was it Singapore, that beat him.
Yeah, they had met,
and Phelps was his idol.
Yeah,
and there was a picture of the two of them.
Yeah,
and he beat Phelps, and Phelps swam over to congratulate him. And the picture of Katie Ledecky at 9 years old getting Michael Phelps' autograph, and then the picture from the other day of Katie Ledecky sitting down and Michael Phelps having her autograph a poster.
Wow.
Wow.
And
him talking about the fact that he's so proud of where the sport is and the people that are coming up, the people that are coming up now.
See, I'm interested in the swimming. I'm interested in. I'm not interested. I don't care if I see one basketball game with our men's professional team there.
Yeah.
I mean, if they can't beat everybody, something's wrong here.
And they've had a problem with a couple of them.
Yeah.
They've had a problem with.
You know what I found interesting, Jim? Have you read those articles? And it made me think, aha, I'm not crazy. They keep referring, one of the problems that they're having is, and this, I guess what I'm referencing here is, you hear a lot of talk about, the modern game and how much better it is, say, when you go back to the Celtics of the 60s and they ran their patterns and it was a whole different game. Well, one of the big problems the U.S. team is having is the international teams run and run and run. They run those patterns, and you actually
they
have
run
to
the
chase
patterns.
those guys around and defend them.
That's right.
So maybe this modern game isn't as great as they're saying it is. You know, they're having a very difficult time keeping up with these guys, and that's where
these other teams are very disciplined,
yeah,
and that is not always present
yeah.
with the United States team. I wonder how Krzyzewski's feeling about this. Of course, the fact that this is his last Olympics, he doesn't, let me get through this.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't want to see a loss at any point in time. So,
Oh gosh, I remember the year John Thompson was the Olympic coach, and they finished third.
oh yeah, wasn't it when was Iverson and them on that
I
team?
can't remember who was on that team, but I went to a game in the Garden in New York. It was a doubleheader. DePaul and Fordham was the first game, and St. John's in Georgetown was the second game. And there was a very typical New Yorker sitting about 2 rows behind us.
Was he getting on John?
Oh, man. Yeah, there he is, John Thompson. Go for the gold and come home with the bronze. Set your fat down, you jerk.
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
That was, I got to, I don't fault the players because they play the game the way it's evolved, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, no.
But you know what? What I don't like is when the writers or the talking heads talk about, how much better all of these games are than they used to be, whatever game you want to. And you know what? That's not really, I'm not saying that they're not good. They are good. But you know what? They're sort of putting down a way of playing, in this case basketball, that used to be sort of, well, I don't even know how typical it was. I think a lot of teams played that way. There were teams that didn't play that way. But the constant motion, chasing around Bob Cousy or John Havlicek all night was probably not the easiest thing for a defensive guy to do. And today, of course, you got your high-flying game. Everybody wants to, jam and posterize everybody, but
or fire it from 35 feet.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. It's either one of the two.
Yeah.
And you know what? The old game seems to have some life in it yet.
It still shows up.
Yeah.
It still shows up, and that's the cool part to it. I think I saw an article and a link on Facebook, and I've been following a lot of the different sports with some of the articles on Facebook and links to videos. And they had the BBC broadcast the other night when the young man from South Africa beat Michael Johnson's record in the 400. And Michael Johnson was the color commentator.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, and it was really, really cool. He was excited.
Yeah, well,
He was excited, and he was amazed simply by the fact that this guy ran that race from the outside lane. He had no idea where anybody was as he was running.
Jim, you know what you make me think of when you say that, and why I can understand Michael Johnson sort of being excited about that, is that as you get older, and Michael Johnson's not a super old guy, but you know what? You know what you've done and what you've done well, and you don't have to prove anything to anybody. And it doesn't matter, you could be talking about any of us sitting here in this room or Michael Johnson or whoever you want to talk about. So I could understand that. I mean, you have no, how could you say it? You're competitive still, probably. But you know what? You have, again, nothing to prove. So you're sort of content with yourself in the sense that, hey, I know what I could do. And I've already done it. I held the world record. Tip of the hat to this guy who broke my record.
Broke it by like 15 100ths of a second, too.
Yeah. And, you can only do what you're called on to do at the moment that you're participating.
Yeah.
And you can't
Yeah.
go back. You can't race this guy. You can't. Hey, he did what he had to do to
Yeah.
train and break the record. God, tip your hat to him. That's
Yeah,
all.
yeah, and he had that reaction that was interesting too, because somebody posted another article with a little video clip, a little GIF file that kept going, as Usain Bolt came into the stadium to get ready for his race. He glanced up and saw the time that this kid ran the 400 in, and the look on Bolt's face was like, "Wow."
Yeah.
You know, the amazement on his face.
Yeah.
So there's a great appreciation of the efforts that other people make too.
Oh, once you start to compete, I always tell the story. The big tournament in 16-inch softball is the Forest Park tournament, and one year we were lucky enough. No, we didn't win, but we finished fourth. That was a big deal, and our guys, of course, were excited. But the guy who was most excited was a guy by the name of Matty Biondic, who played for Lettuce and was an excellent player. He's in the Hall of Fame. Matty was more excited about us. Oh my God, you know what? He couldn't stop talking about it. Because I think the natural thing is a competitor wants to have more teams to compete with or people to compete with, and he was just excited. Somebody else came up into that level of
Up to
competition.
The level. Sure.
So I can understand that. It's a good thing. I mean, at least sports-wise, competition, as long as it's fair, is a great thing. That's what you're there for, to compete.
No doping involved.
Yeah.
No doping involved. Should we take a break, Jen? All right, let's take a break.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, August the 17th, the year 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich and Armchair Experts.
And in the words of ravishing Rick Rude, cut the music!
Stop the music! Interesting, just talking about doping made me, I happened to glance down before you got here, and I see that the NFL said Monday the 4 linebackers being investigated to an alleged link to performance-enhancing drugs will be suspended if they don't agree to be interviewed in the next 10 days. The NFL sent a letter to the NFL Players Association detailing its plan to suspend the Green Bay Packers' Julius Peppers and Clay Matthews. Bears fans, there's meatballs all over the Bears world right now. I'll be excited about that. The Pittsburgh Steelers, James Harrison, and free agent Mike Neal if they don't speak to the league by the 25th of August. The punishment will start the next day.
But you know what? I've followed this a little bit. And I understand that the players' union was balking at these players going in to speak to the league because why? The league actually doesn't have any proof.
I don't know, but it's interesting too. Just saying that, and if you haven't read this article in the August 9th issue of Sports Illustrated, Tim Rowan wrote an article about Roger Goodell, and what's it like to come in front of Roger Goodell?
Okay,
and it's like you're being called in front of the principal.
Well, I think this whole first off, I'm not going to blame Goodell because the powers that he has, I guess, are powers that have been bargained.
Yeah,
and so shame on the players' union for agreeing to give him as much latitude as he has,
and I think they had gotten used to Paul Tagliabue, who was not the stern taskmaster.
Well, think about this though, Jim. I mean, say the whole Deflategate deal.
Yeah.
Now, you could make a case. I'm not saying that the case is accurate, but you could make a case and say, well, the NFL is big on parity. They love parity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Patriots have been too good for too long. And you know what? Since you have these broad powers, what's the best way to bring the Patriots down? You take something that is probably really relatively minor, even though they've blown it into something major, and the Patriots lose the most key player on their roster for four games.
Mm-hmm.
Good way to bring that team down.
Yeah.
I would say this. I think the commissioner is an employee of the owners. He is not a czar as Judge Landis was back in the days of baseball, or he shouldn't be. And when you give anybody that sweeping you say, oh, you know what, Jim, I don't like the way you parted your hair today, so that's a 2-game suspension.
Your socks did not meet league standards.
Yeah. That's a little too, as far as I'm
John's
concerned,
smiling.
that's a little too much.
John's smiling, but you know what? I mean, it's gotten to that point.
That's right.
That's a little too much. I mean, I'm all for having good authority figures and whatnot, but I think this guy's authority is way too... So my take on this, and I could be wrong, but what I thought I had read is the 4 guys you named, I think were named in that Al Jazeera report that named Manning as well.
Yeah, I think so.
And so now, what's his name over here, the commissioner, Goodell, is asking these guys to
come in for a chat,
to visit the wizard over at Oz.
Yeah,
and he'll be behind the curtain and what do you have to say for yourself, boys?
Yeah,
I mean it's a trial basically without any proof, evidence, anything. The way I see it,
it really is. They talk about what it's like being called to the NFL office. A letter appears in the locker if the season is in progress. In the off season, it arrives at home via FedEx. His agent and the union receive copies via email too. There's a request that the player report to the league office, 345 Park Avenue in Midtown Manhattan, for a meeting with the commissioner. Attendance is mandatory. Player arrives in New York the night before his meeting, meets with his lawyer over dinner, gets his story straight, what he wants to tell the commissioner, how he might answer certain questions. He worries about the message coming across the right way. The next morning, as he approaches the league office, he and his lawyers are met by a swarm of media members and paparazzi. Don't look menacing, the lawyer has told him. Just smile, look relaxed. They go to the 6th floor where they walk to a waiting area of pearl white seating. Behind one glass sits the Lombardi Trophy. Behind another, every Super Bowl ring. Magnifying glasses are laid out for anybody who wants to get a closer look. Now he has to wait while the conference room is prepared. 15 minutes feels like forever. He's transported back to middle school, sitting outside the principal's office, waiting. And sometimes they've talked about that they did not even meet in the league office. They went to the basement of the building, windowless, as cold as possible, just to try to do, to meet whatever it was.
Well, I mean, if you make this trip and nothing happens, since you're coming from, maybe you got to come from the West Coast or Mississippi or Minnesota or something, and nothing happens, does the league at least pop for your plane fare since you had to travel and you had to stay in a hotel? Well, maybe you didn't have to stay in a hotel, but
good question. Here's an example of one, and we remember this. Tank Johnson. Tank Johnson visited the commissioner in 2007 following multiple off-field incidents, including gun charges to which he'd pleaded guilty. Then a defensive tackle with the Bears, Johnson had argued in part that the legal system tried to make an example of him. Tank, how many games do you think you should be suspended? Goodell asked. Johnson looked Goodell in the eye. None, he replied. In this case, I agree with you, Johnson recalls Goodell saying, but I have to suspend you to uphold the integrity of the National Football League.
Oh, God. Yeah. Idiot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, players get popped for committing infractions on the field and off the field. deflating footballs or whatever, and the majority of them don't come to the league offices to meet with Goodell. Interesting article.
That is interesting.
It's a long article. I think it's more than we want to get into today. What else should we talk about?
Well, how about you're saying you wanted to talk about the Bears?
I don't know. Do you want to talk about the Bears?
Oh, why not?
All right.
Did you watch any of the game?
I did not see any of the game. We had something. Actually, we went to a concert that night at College of DuPage and enjoyed it much more.
Oh, well,
we went to a jazz concert.
John, that light is flashing. Is that your phone or something? Yes. Okay. I didn't know what that was.
That was much more enjoyable.
Yeah, I didn't see very much of the game, and even if I would have saw the whole game, I really, the thing that sort of gets to you is maybe the Bears will be bad, maybe they'll be good, maybe they'll be mediocre. But how you could actually tell from one game, I don't know.
You can't. You know what? I mean, it's the first exhibition game. How much did the starters even play?
Well, there's the other thing. They said the starters, didn't generate on offense anyway. Didn't generate much. I'm thinking, well, sometimes it takes you a little while in a regular season game to get going. I mean, can you at least give them that much leeway? Then?
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, now you're dealing with a situation where you got your center is out for the year. Your offensive line is questionable, I guess. Your defensive backfield. I was listening on the way over, and Hub Arkush says from his watching, he said, "Now I'm worried about the whole defensive backfield." He said, "I think you got problems problems everywhere." So it was good. They say Kevin White is looking good, and they've got this combined practice with the Patriots because they're playing them Thursday night. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing this combined scrimmage, and he's out there watching. He's watching the game, and he said the team's got some issues. But again, you got to go to the point. You haven't even played 2 preseason games, and actually it was interesting. Hub says he puts more stock into these combined scrimmages with other teams. He said preseason games for the most part are a waste of time.
Well, I don't know why Hub is saying that though, because there's a whole different how could you say it? The atmosphere between a scrimmage and a game is totally different. A scrimmage, you could maybe you can screw up and you have another chance to do it. It's not going to cost anything per se. A game is a game. I mean, if you screw up, it's gonna cost you. So I don't know what Hub's talking about there. I'm not an expert like Hub, but I would sort of disagree with that.
Well, I think what he's saying here too is it gives, I think there's more of an opportunity for players to show themselves in in a more controlled environment against another team than with each other.
Well, that's the whole point. Well, yeah, I mean, okay, that part I get. Yeah. If you're playing against another team, that's fine. But the whole controlled environment deal is what I'm talking about. The controlled environment is not a game, and to me, it's nothing like a game. I mean, I've been in scrimmages, of course, with your teammates, and I know he's making that distinction. But a scrimmage is nowhere close to a game. I don't care who you're up against. It's just not. And so I don't know. I don't know if I buy into what he's saying there.
By the way, being in scrimmages just made me think of something that I had a good laugh last night. I've told you with Facebook and posting on different things. I had made a comment on somebody's picture on the Boers and Bernstein board, and I see somebody else liked it, and his name was Tim Caravia. And I looked at the page, and it's Bill and Lisa's son.
Oh, okay.
So we're now Facebook friends.
That's good. Well, he must be fairly old himself, too.
Yeah. I said I friended him, and I knew he'd posted on boards, and I never really connected it. But I think it was a picture of somebody posted of their little boy, and we had commented on it. And I saw his name, and I said, "You're not Bill and Lisa's son, are you?"
You know, the problem with, say, the press reporting on a preseason game is a coach may say, well, a good example, probably a really good example, is you got Cody Whitehair, right, who's trying to become an NFL guard, but in reality, we need somebody to back up the center.
Yeah.
So he comes in and he plays, I don't know how much he played, but he had a fairly rough time of it.
Yeah.
And you know what? That sort of gets panned in the paper. But you know what? The coaches really need to see what will happen if we put this guy in. Thanks, John. If we put this guy into a game. I mean, and he also needs to get into a game because you never know what's going to happen. So how are you fairly assessing what the Bears do? Now, I'm sure that's not the only case where that happened on last Thursday night. The other thing about last Thursday night, Jim, and what the players sort of acknowledged, and I sort of liked their take on it, is that Wade Phillips seemed to, I don't know if he game planned for the Bears.
Oh,
they used a lot of
corner blitzes,
yeah,
delayed safety blitz, line stunts.
And when they talked to the Bears O lineman, they said, "Hey, you know what? This is hey, I'm not faulting the other team's defensive coach. We let up the sacks, and we just have to be better."
And yeah, because you're going to see this stuff during the season, so you might as well get used to it.
So really, thank you, Wade Phillips.
Right.
I mean, for giving us some
Right.
kind of idea here.
Exposing our problems and giving us an opportunity to work on it. So who's going to be the center here?
Oh, it's probably Larson.
Larson, I'm thinking it's going to be.
Yeah, Ted Larson. I mean, unless they keep saying that Cornelius Edison was a very good player in college, although at a small school, and I believe the Bears picked him up toward the end of last year, and he might have been on the practice squad. So if and he's a true center, so that might be another option. I don't know, and I'm sure they're going to be looking at the waiver wires and whatnot. Although I'm always,
every Tuesday during the season, guys are going to be coming in the Lake Forest.
I'm really, really, I don't care. Say Hub Arkush or anybody who's an expert. I'm really, really skeptical on that whole deal. How much you gonna? I know guys, they cut guys and they bring other guys in. You're taking a guy another team cut and over a guy that you've seen practice and has practiced with your team, at least is familiar with what you do. Now you got to plug this other guy in and teach him whatever he needs to know. I mean, most of these guys are usually special team guys anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't get that at all. I mean, it's just it's just beyond me. I don't see how that's a really good situation for anybody. And, I'm really skeptical of that whole deal.
Are we looking at another 6-10 season or 5-11 or?
I don't know. Let me just look at two positions. Last year we had Christian Jones and Shea McClellan starting on the inside.
McClellan's with the Patriots now.
Okay, Danny Trevathan and Jarrell Freeman have to be an upgrade.
Sure,
I would say. So
I would
right
think
there, if that's an I don't know who Nix has replaced technically, but I would say right there you have an upgrade. So if that translates, if that upgrade, wins against replacement, Jim, if that translates into football,
that's right.
I'd say now. That's the type of wins against replacement I can understand.
Now that's
because I think that the two guys we have now, not that I don't like the two guys we had before. I thought they were decent guys. These two guys, I think, are arguably better.
You've got an improvement.
Yeah,
with these two guys. No,
so
I agree.
The other thing is, I have to ask you this. I was talking to somebody about this the other day. How come since and the guy that I was talking to had the two names perfect? Mike Brown and Tony Parrish were the safeties in the Super Bowl year, the what where we lost to the Colts.
06, yeah.
Since that time, the Bears safety position has been like up for grabs, and looks like it still might be.
It still is. I think.
What the heck has happened there, Jim?
I don't know.
Why is it like that?
Is it poor drafting?
Why the heck did we get rid of Al Afalava?
You just like his name. That's all.
That's it.
You just like his name. He wasn't any good. You just like to say it. But here goes back. This goes back to the issue that what have we had 10 years? 10 years of poor drafts.
I don't. 10 years. How? I would think in 10 years we'd be able to find a decent safety somewhere.
You would think.
Who was the guy that we had right before the guy we have now?
Oh, I don't know. He probably wasn't here long enough for me to learn his name.
The guy right before Amos. The guy we got from Minnesota. I'm not the Vikings, but we drafted out of Minnesota. He was a good, like a 4th or 5th round pick. His brother was in the league. I can't think of.
Oh, I can't think of.
And
his
I'm
name.
like, I thought this was the guy. Oh, that guy's gone. Now
we got another guy.
We got a guy. Don't send me no more guys.
Yeah.
I don't want any more guys.
We got to have a guy.
We need a guy here.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, what's this whole thing? I think I've asked you this before, too. One of our guys there is Jones Cordy. What is with all these two names now?
Yeah, and he got in trouble today. Apparently, there was another fight on the field between the Bears and the Patriots, or he was a little too exuberant with a hit, and
Right.
Fox pulled him off.
Boy, lucky Trustman wasn't there. He would have had to sit in the corner.
Did you hear the comment that Lance Briggs made about Trustman?
No.
He didn't. He says he didn't belong here. He was not a Chicago Bears head coach. He had no business being here.
Well, in retrospect, I would have to agree with that.
He was right. He was right.
I mean, even guys like Wannstedt or Lovie Smith, who, Lovie had more success than Wannstedt, but those are sort of. I mean, I could buy those guys as Chicago coaches, but Trustman was a little.
No, he was a little
out
bit
of line there.
He was a little bit out of line. I mean, Wannstedt had a great reputation as a defensive coach, great defensive mind.
Yeah.
Lovey, same thing.
Yeah.
In
fact, I'm interested to see what Lovey does with U of I.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't understand where you have a city like Chicago with all. I mean, Public League has some good players. Catholic League definitely has strong players. How the heck do we never get any good players to come to Illinois?
What? I don't know really what it is. Illinois has never had a reputation of being a football school.
Years ago, Jim, I met a girl who was a stewardess for Braniff Airline, and I started to go out with her. But she lived in Houston, so I would fly down there to see her. And met this one friend of hers, a male friend, and he one day we're talking. He goes, "Well, Texas is a football state. You guys are a basketball state." And I'm like, I never thought of it that way before, but I'm like, you know
what? That's
probably
could be the
true.
Possibility.
Yeah.
That could be I mean, look at Michigan. Michigan State was always viewed as the basketball school until the last 10 years with Mark D'Antonio.
Yeah.
Michigan State? Oh no, they're a basketball school.
Yeah.
Well, and they hadn't. Well, you had that long period from when Duffy Doherty retired.
Yeah.
That they really, with the exception of a couple of years, really never did anything.
Yeah. I was, my love affair with MSU ended for a long time. Now that D'Antonio's there, I'm, I still, you know what, Jim? I still say one of my favorite teams of all time was the one with Bubba Smith, George Webster, Clint Jones, Baba Pisa, Jimmy Ray.
Yeah.
Just a great, Charlie Thornhill.
Yeah, there were some great team.
Great teams. And what a game. I have to say, I was just, for some reason, I got up this morning and the name Jim.
Well, that was good.
Jim
That was good.
Stillwagon.
At least,
It went into my memory bank. So when I got to work, I looked up Rich Glover, Granville Liggins, and Jim Stillwagon, because in the late 60s, those guys were all great middle guards. Glover for Nebraska, Liggins for Oklahoma, Stillwagon for Ohio State. None of them ever made it in the NFL, even though they were all Americans. And I thought to myself, well, everybody ran a 4-3 back then in the pros. And they were a little undersized, I think, in general. But I'm thinking, had they run a 3-4 defense in the pros at that time, would those guys have been good pros? But as I'm looking these guys up, I want to say it was the 1969 or 70 Oklahoma-Nebraska game is also touted as, maybe the best game of all time.
that was
geez,
yeah.
along with
or was it the 71 game?
the 70s. I don't know which one.
I don't know, but I remember an Oklahoma-Nebraska. Yeah, right there, because they'd always play like day after Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving.
Yeah. I remember. I think the Oklahoma quarterback was Jack Mildren.
Yeah.
They ran the. I don't know if they call it the wishbone.
Wishbone, really? They were
it was a
running
triple
that.
option type of thing.
Oh man, and that was like, and I think it was one of those. If I'm thinking of the right game, it was like one of those
back and forth games.
Yeah, last
one with the ball wins.
Last one with the ball wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe I saw that game too. It was outstanding. I don't know if it had the build-up that Michigan State Notre Dame had, and I'm not sure that it had the gigantic. It didn't have as many potential pros. For the media. So
the Michigan State Notre Dame game that had national championship implications. You had a lot of great ball players on both sides who you expected to see in the pros.
Yeah.
And it was a 10-10 tie.
Yeah. Parsegian still claims he didn't just, he was afraid that something would happen, that they'd block the kick and run it back. I believe. I think that was what he said.
I think that was his excuse. He was afraid of that.
Back in those days, it was far from a sure thing when you kicked the field goal.
Oh yeah.
So.
And wasn't the weather lousy that day?
It was raw.
Yeah.
Very raw.
Yeah.
No precipitation.
No.
Cold
it was cold and windy that day.
Yeah.
As definitely. I remember. Back.
I remember Bill Olbrich and I were rooting for MSU, and Phil Williams and Bob Klimzak were rooting for Notre Dame, and we're at Olbrich's house, and several fights broke out between us during the course of the game.
I had to go. I still remember. I had to go to the doctor that day for some reason, and I didn't want to go.
I don't blame you.
I didn't want to go. And I I said a bad word, John.
Oh.
I said a bad word. I moaned about it. And I wound up losing the fight, having to go to the doctor. And my father listened to the game out in the car on the radio. And when I came out, he said it was a 10-10 tie. And I'm going, ah!
Jay, you're making me think of, this is... My brother, when we were kids, was a Floyd Patterson fan. He loved Floyd Patterson for some reason. So the first time, I think it was the first time that Liston fought Patterson. It wasn't on TV, but we listened to it on the radio. Yeah. So it was also bedtime and bath time. So my dad says that my brother didn't want to get in the bath because he wanted to hear the fight, right? So my dad says, it's 15 rounds. You get in the, do your bath.
Hurry up
and hurry up and get out. You can listen to the fight.
That's right.
He gets in the bath. Liston polishes Patterson off in the first round.
About 2 minutes into
it. My brother gets out of the bath, and I'm, very cheery. Hey, Dale, guess what? He got that look on his face like, I know something bad's coming. Hey, Liston won the fight. He knocked him out in the first. I thought my brother was going to cry. Oh, my God. Oh, jeez. My dad, he was sheep. He was like, "Oh my, I'm sorry, I didn't know." He's the heavyweight champion.
I expected him to go.
In the first round.
I expected it to go 15 rounds. You know, when I saw this article and heard about this news the other day about the Wrigley Field disc jockey being fired, all I could think of was you at that basketball game.
Oh, there you go.
Did you? There was an inadvertent musical choice that brought the team
An inadvertent musical choice.
Yes, it brought the team a public relations headache, resulting in the firing Monday of a DJ at Wrigley Field. I will read the title of the song.
Ooh.
So I'll be in. No, I better not. The song, Smack My B Up, by the English band Prodigy, was played in the middle of the ninth inning Sunday night after Cubs closer Aroldis Chapman, who was suspended earlier this season for 30 games for a domestic violence incident involving his girlfriend, struck out the side.
Yeah, well, first thing I'm not buying is that was a unintentional thing there by the DJ.
Yeah.
I'm not buying. Oh, yeah, I just happened to put that one on.
Yeah, that just happened to be on the playlist
Yeah.
and do that. I kept thinking of that a couple of times that they've had in the past with the seventh inning stretch when Mongo was up. Mongo McMichael was up there, and he was about half in the bag.
Oh, yeah.
And announced what he thought that everyone should do to the umpire because of some of the calls that night.
Oh, my gosh.
And
Only Mongo.
And Jeremy Piven, when he led the crowd, great Chicago connection. Apparently nobody knew about his show, or at least the person who talked to him didn't know about his show. I just forgot the title of it, but they said, "Oh, if you've got any catchphrases or sayings that you're known for in the show, go ahead and say them." So the first words out of Piven's mouth when he got out there was, "All right, hug it out, my little bitches."
Oh, jeez. Hey, you know what, Jim? We could solve all these problems if we just went back to having an organist. An organist only.
I think all you should do is just put Harry up, a video of Harry up on the screen, and that's the end of it.
Well, did you see? I've caught twice, probably in the last 2 weeks. Well, they must not have been able to get anybody because they had the Ernie Banks video with
That's
him singing.
fine. Fine.
"Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
I think that's fine.
So-
It got to the point where there were so many people up there that so many people singing, they'd introduce it, and everybody would look at each other and go, "Who?" So can't beat Ditka though when he was about half in the bag trying to sing it.
Oh, he's bad.
He's bad. All right. Did we kill another hour? Yeah, and then some.
Look at that.
Look at that. For two guys who have no idea what they're going to talk about, they somehow managed to fill an hour. It's amazing. It amazes me every week when we do this.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, why should it amaze us? We've been having these conversations for years.
I know. If there's only a way we could make some money on this thing, John, I don't know. I'd like to make some money on this.
Jim wants to make money on it, Jen.
Yeah. Can you work on that, John? Get back to us. You're the producer here.
Really, you should be able to make this magic thing happen here, John. He's got nothing to say, Jim.
John's sitting there going, "I got nothing."
He goes, first I get cooped up with these two nuts, and now they want me to do something like make money for them.
Oh. Well, I guess we'll do this again next week.
Next week again?
Yeah.
Holy man, we're on a roll,
Yeah,
partner.
and then we don't do it for like a month.
Oh, jeez.
So
Okay.
then there'll be a lot of text messages, and our best material will be left on the phones,
Yeah,
and we won't know what to do.
yeah.
Then we'll get here that day when we do it in September, and we'll have nothing to talk about.
We could talk about the Bears. They'll be in season.
Oh yeah, that'll get everyone excited. We'll be wondering when the Bulls training camp opens.
Yeah. Oh, that'll be
What are your feelings about the Bears this year, gentlemen?
I don't think they're going to be a very good ball club.
I don't know. To me, I have to see.
At least right now. But again, I said one exhibition game. You've got issues of I think you might have some issues on the line. You got some issues on the backfield.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be another year or two before they show something.
A couple of their players did get is injured already, right?
Yeah. And then every day somebody's in a fight.
Yeah.
And they were wondering today: is it bad teams that fight more, or good teams? Did bad teams fight more during practice?
Oh, I don't think there's any.
Do you ever have any fights in practice when?
Yeah.
You,
Oh, sure. Yeah, no question about it. The coaches like that. The coaches always like that.
Oh, well, if they don't do it this year, there's always next year.
Yeah, you better believe it, Jim.
Yeah. We'll wait for 2025 to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Super Bowl Shuffle. Ditko will be here that night.
Yeah.
Ditko will be here that night. I got to tell you, there's a Nancy's Pizza by us, and I went into Nancy's one time to pick up an order. And I wasn't really paying any attention, and I kind of walked in, and there was this figure over in the corner. And it kind of made me go, ah! When I looked at it, and then I realized it was a cutout of Ditka with an advertisement for Nancy's. A giant orange face staring at me.
Well, as long as we went a little bit over, and you brought this subject up, Jim, do you think the Bears are the only team that are having fights during training camp?
Oh, no.
So,
no,
I mean,
No, it's the only team I'm following, though. That's everybody.
And
Everybody does it. Everybody.
I remember the time when Zambrano got into it with was it Barrett?
Michael Barrett.
And everybody made a big deal out of it. I go, these guys the next day were probably laughing about it. I mean, that's the way it goes.
Yeah. It never. Yeah, that's all it is. All right, should we leave now? Okay, we'll go. John looks at me like, I don't know, whatever you want to do. You want to go? Are we done?
Let's go.
All right, let's go. All right, time for us to wrap it up, get out of here. We'll do this again. We'll do this nonsense again next week for another hour and change of scintillating conversation. Until that time, we are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, August the 17th, the year 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. A special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeffick of WRHS FM Norwich and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, August the 16th, the year 2016. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.